Hi, my name is Tim Carter, and I pastor Landmark Missionary Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Arkansas. We meet at 2200 Marshall Road in Jacksonville, Arkansas. This brief video is entitled Where White Went Wrong. It seems like Wuest, in his expanded translation of the Greek New Testament, copyright 1961, Wuest seemed to have ignored the difference between a finite verb, an aorist tense, simplest form of action, and then a participle who participates, which participates in the action of a finite verb. And James White of Alpha and Omega Ministries, probably one of the most scholastic Baptists who subscribes or supports Reformed theology. He is Baptist, however, according to his own statement, has a very credible Alpha and Omega Ministries. Sometimes perceived controversial, I suppose, if people just would study as he advocates. He also admits himself to have blind spots, that is, he's fallible. The Calvinism, of which he says he's a high Calvinist, it is also something he says is fallible. So as we evaluate Calvinism in light of the Scripture, rather than contrasting it with Arminianism, which is just an endless battle, somewhat like self-righteousness, if I'm allowed to compare myself with someone else, great, I'll come out looking great. But when compared to Christ, he's incomparable, and I just simply bow my head and will not so much as lift my eyes before heaven. So with that in mind, nothing James White or Alpha and Omega Ministries advocates apart from the Scriptures is really something we should refuse to evaluate. Where he went wrong was in 1 John 5:1. He has a nice video. We'll include a link to this video that is on this post. And he shows that the antecedent action to the verbal substantive, everyone who is believing, even in Net Bible, if you go to Net Bible online, that is, they did not translate that as believing ing, the present tense, which is emphatically stated in the Koine text. Koine grammars, Greek grammars, all, not any exception, all note that in the Koine text the kind of action, but a participle being adverbial or adjectival and participating only with the action of the finite verb really will never make it a finite verb. But he noticed and used 1 John 5:1 to show that new birth, or having been fathered, or that is one who has been, that's actually a perfect tense, perfect passive, that's a finite verb. It says every person who is believing that Jesus is the Christ has been previously, it's antecedent action, fathered out from God. So he's correct that the birth out from God precedes one who is believing. Where White went wrong was he didn't notice and bring it to the attention of his audience in John 20:31, where it says these things were written in order that ye might believe, that's King James Version, that Jesus is the Christ, and that believing. So in your common King James English Version, it notices believe and believing. The first believe use is a finite verb, aorist tense. The second one is a participle referring to the person who is believing. And the Bible makes it clear that the purpose of the gospel to have been written, perfect tense, and remain on record, that is the attesting miracles of Jesus and their contextualized narratives. The very purpose of it to be written and to remain on record is in order that a person might deliberately, and Dr. James White, a Greek professor himself, could make that real clear to a student that the deliberative subjunctive, he knows that. He also knows Hebrew language, the causal stem in the Hiphil language. He's aware of Genesis 15:6, where it says Abram, he caused himself to believe. So Dr. James White's very aware of causal agency as the oldest definition of free will. He's very aware of the deliberative subjunctive in the aorist tense in John 20:31. He just went wrong in that it's a blind spot where he had been primed before he studied Greek, of course. He probably had been taught regeneration precedes faith, which is a very abstract and rather absurd assertion, because faith there is not noted or demarcated as a finite verb or a participle. Are we talking about a believer? So where White went wrong is where we went wrong. And it appears Net Bible ignored it. I haven't looked at Young's literal translation yet to confirm that, but all these things are free online at blueletterbible.org. So if you ever want to go and check and just see how many people and how many modern translations avoided believe and believing, but also notice how carefully it was demarcated in John 20:31 in the King James Version. However, in 1 John 5:1, King James Version, whatever translator did 1 John, because there were 50 plus translators. So I don't study other translations. I compare the translators within the King James. But whoever translated John 20:31 did a really good job of showing the difference between believe and believing. That is, aorist finite verb in believe, and then a present active participle believing. But then they used a word called believeth. And I'm sure in Old English that may have been appropriate in 1 John 5:1. But where White went wrong was not demarcating that. So we'll include his link. I know Calvary Chapel is a group that spoke back to James White, saying something that he was saying about antecedent action was Calvinism. It's not Calvinism. It's called Koine. The Koine Greek New Testament is the determinant in such matters of controversy, or it has been found to remove the embarrassing difficulty that comes in, for example, the large, ever-growing argument about faith preceding regeneration or regeneration preceding faith. In the Koine text, that dispute or contradiction doesn't exist. So that's where White went wrong. Great ministry, great resource, Alpha and Omega. Avail yourself of it as often as you can. Learn to study and appreciate, and also know that Dr. James White would be the first one to tell you that he is aware that he has blind spots. Maybe like the rest of us, however, he is honest enough to admit it. He's unusually honest. That is, many others like myself, I usually have a hard time admitting where I went wrong. And in this case, I was fortunate that a missionary Baptist preacher named Dr. Benjamin Marcus Bogard had published a work called 52 Doctrinal Lessons, and it was given to me by someone that wasn't necessarily a supporter of it, but at least it gave me a primer to get started. And that was now, 38, a long time ago, let's say. And I've learned a lot from the faithful students called Missionary Baptists, who seem to be very free to support the text because they don't advocate denominated doctrine like Calvinism or Arminianism. So this is where White went wrong, and I'll include the link to his video where he discusses 1 John 5:1. Listen to it carefully, notice what he emphasizes, and then notice just how small a thing it is that has caused such a big dispute. Have a blessed day.